A very good morning to everyone, and welcome to the final hour of today's morning call here on Radio 4 with me, Stacey Rotter. Here's the weather forecast for today. It's going to be fine and very hot with a high of about 35 degrees. Right now it's 30 and the relative humidity is at 74%. Multiple sclerosis, MS, is an unpredictable, often disabling disease of the central nervous system that disrupts the flow of information within the brain and between the brain and body. Today is World MS Day, officially marked on the 30th of May each year, a day to create global solidarity and hope for the future. Events and campaigns have been taking place throughout the month, bringing the global MS community together to share stories, raise awareness, and campaign with and for everyone affected by multiple sclerosis. The 2018 campaign is called #BringingUsCloser, and the theme is research. My guest for this hour is Russian pianist Olga Bobrovnikova, who is also a MS patient herself. She was recently here in Hong Kong to give a performance and to raise awareness of the disease, and she's going to share her story and journey with MS and music with us. Her immersion in the lost history of the Russian piano school revealed major differences in and controversy regarding the style of piano performance, as well as coinciding with a growing interest in the brain and music, a passion for pleasure in performance, and a study of the neurology of her MS-damaged brain created her book, Playing the Pathways of My Brain, which is a fusion of fascinating musical history, a wide review of scientific research, and detail of a new performance method. And this is part one of my interview with Olga Bobrovnikova. Take us back to the time that you were diagnosed with MS and how that impacted your life.
That changed everything in my life, probably for the best. Now looking back, of course, I wouldn't do anything differently.
Mm-hmm. So how so? I mean, what was it like? What did you notice was happening to you? And when did you go to the doctors? When did they tell you?
Well, it's quite complex because the first flare of MS occurred way before. It was in Russia in 1986, the first flare. Mind you, I wasn't diagnosed at that time. Yes, I was told it was some neurological one-off event, and I was told to live the life as normal as possible. And so I bless my neurologist that he didn't tell me the truth, because that would be impact probably badly on my life. But since 86 to 2003, things were normal. And that in 2001, being already immigrating in Belgium and living completely differently, when the diagnosis came, I sort of took a look at my life and realized that I need to change everything, and that I did.
What was that event?
That was the event. The first flare was very, very violent, and.
What exactly happened?
Well, I was paralyzed below the waist and couldn't walk anymore. And I was put back on my legs by neurologists and doctors in Moscow with vitamins, with
physiotherapy?
Yes, lots of physiotherapy, with lots of massages, with lots of, supportive therapies. And that was first event. And then the second event was in 96, already being immigrated and being in Belgium, was undiagnosed again because I refused all the sort of, aggressive treatment by cortisone, But at that time it was nothing available. Mm-hmm. It was no DMDs available for patients. And I was told the first time that I had multiple sclerosis. Probably. probably, because I refused to do lumbar puncture. I just signed out from hospital. I came home. I started to treat myself as in Moscow with physio, doing myself exercises, doing myself rehab therapy, and lots of vitamins, healthy food, and trying to get stress out of my life.
And that worked.
Well, that was okay. And then it was another one in 2000. And then it made me think very hard what to do. And then I found a neurologist who told me that I need, first of all, to be diagnosed properly. And the MRI has been done. And he said he had two news for me. One that was good, one was bad. And the good news was that there is a treatment now available. And he said it costs a lot of money, and the social security is not necessarily will be up to reimburse my treatment. And, well, it has side effects. And he said, anyway, it's worthwhile to try. And we tried. That it was in 2001. And since then, between 2001 and 2003, I didn't make anything about changing from commercial to non-commercial. I did it only in 2003. That's all the commercial contracts were cancelled. And I said, yes, I go public about my diagnosis. Because you imagine which crazy impresario, which crazy agent would sign up somebody, because all the contracts are signed, let's say 6 months at least before the concert and public engagements.
And you don't know whether or not you would ever be able to
absolutely not
perform.
Yeah. So that was it, and then, since then my life is dedicated to multiple sclerosis and other neurological condition, to fight again and to tell people that all is possible. Normal life is possible. Not just you just need to adapt. You just need to be pragmatic and and cautious about yourself, and share with other people your condition. That was my choice.
And at the time that you were diagnosed, it coincided with your discovery of a particular pianist.
Yes.
Composer. Composer. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Composer, pianist. Composer.
Composer, pianist. Yeah. Arranger. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So can you tell us that story?
That story is about the incredible man who was living by the end of 19th century at the Belle Epoque in Russia. He was German origins, and he was completely written out of history. And it's one of my cases where I try to help somebody or some stories with, I hate bad ends. I'm a supporter of happy ends in every possible way. And the man was so talented. I just discovered by sheer accident, working in the industry of CDs, DVDs, a particular recording of this man, which survived throughout history, on Edison, rolls. One of the first existing recording, Edison rolls. And recording was about 2 minutes, and the recording was cracks, noises, all of these pollution noises, but through that came out incredible musicality, incredible pianism, incredible virtuosity. And I said to myself, how come I don't know the name? How come I don't know the story of this man? Because it's said in a little CD sleeve. I have to tell you that it was 100 years of Deutsche Grammophon celebrated And then they published a big, was it Deutsche Grammophon? No, I think it was Philips historical recordings. They published a big box of 100 double CDs of all the best performances ever worldwide. And this recording was in that box. And it just was one track of his music, played by other pianist who was in fact, he was the pianist playing that recording was the teacher of my teacher. And then I said to myself, it was a sign. So I need to hear that. And when I heard that, it was so incredible. And I read in the sleeve, CD sleeve, that's the man who was a professor of Moscow Conservatoire for 19 years, and me being Moscow Conservatoire sort of output, I said, how it's possible? Why don't I know this man? So that was another story, detective story of unraveling. Who was the man? Why he was written out of the history? And why it's all happened? And so that's resulted in a book that I wrote about him, historical novel. That's recording of his were released finally commercially on Marston Records in America, and all these Edison rolls were recovered, badly, not very well cleaned out, but the sound of period still there, with cracks and with noises, but the genius comes out of it. His name was Paul August Pabst. He was German-born in Königsberg in 1854, and he died in Moscow in 1897. And he taught about the whole generation of professors and pianists of Russian piano school, so-called. So I realized that, in fact, he was the founder, and he was the creator of Moscow Piano School. Amazing story. I have so many.
We've just heard a rare recording of Paul Pabst playing Estrella from Schumann's Carnival. My interview with Olga Bobrovnikova, a pianist with multiple sclerosis, continues. So, what did this have to do with your discovery of MS? How did it impact your life?
I had to make some choices about commercial, about how I sort of live and lead my life without being a professional pianist on stage, without being performing. I need to do something alternative. I need to do, and I need also to think about what could happen if I wasn't able to go on stage anymore. So one thread was about doing things for charities and non-commercially, and the other one was about writing, about teaching, about doing all sorts of activities with my knowledge of piano, but also it's pushed me to do lots of studies about human brain and how the human brain is impacted by the neurological conditions. So it's a two-way street. It's how music does for brain and how brain does for music. And that was the beginning of another journey.
So can you take us on that journey and tell us what you discovered?
Oh, that journey didn't finish yet. It's only started.
Okay.
It's all where the book which I wrote, which is called "The Playing the Pathways of My Brain," is just the beginning. It's just the result of the studies. It's just a result of what I found out about the music and the brain in the first instance. And now it is going to be developed by creating my own performing method. Already one was finished by last year, and that was about building the musical brain for very young children, preschool, pre-music education, pre-solfège, what we call. And that is already done. And then from that came the realization that it's applicable to all the possible kind of, disciples, all kind of followers. It can be applied to the people with brain conditions. It can be applied to young children. It can be applied to old people. It can be applied to anybody who wants to develop the new method of not simply playing the notes, not simply executing the score from the score, but language of music, which I say I'm teaching not the music. I'm not the piano teacher. I'm teaching the language of music, applicable to anybody.
I'm wanting to know now about how playing the piano, can playing the piano help someone with MS?
It can help with MS, it can help with Parkinson's disease, it can help with all brain conditions, stroke, after stroke rehabilitation. Certainly MS, as it affects the motor function, in a way it affects cognitive functions as well, and emotional. We were talking about MS depression. We're talking about not seeing the way out of the disease because, it's no cure. It's no, at the moment. So music, by giving all these 3 levels of reward, well, it's very simple, our brain is working on hormones of reward, or serotonin and dopamine. Dopamine, which is absolutely necessary, which is lacking to be released in Parkinson's disease, for instance. The pleasure you get out of achievement, the pleasure you get by simply remembering and hearing the melody which you heard before, that's immediate the dopamine release in the brain, and the brain gets reward, and that enables you to carry on. That's simple mechanics of the brain function. So, coming back to your question, MS, people are lacking on reward, of course, because of the fatigue element in MS symptoms, which is one of the main issue with multiple sclerosis. By the way, it's called multiple. It can affect any functions of the your central or your periphery nervous system. In that, when you entrain somebody with very targeted, very focused, and not big tasks, not trying to overwhelm somebody with, hours and hours of rehearsing. Just simply give them targeted exercises. And when it works, it's enormous reward, believe me.
Let's talk about your career now is to, as you said, you're writing, you're teaching, you are still playing.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So, and in playing, you are also sharing about your MS. You're making people aware of it through fundraising and all of these efforts. Can you tell us what you're doing these days?
Basically, it's first of all, it's all about awareness, because people don't know what the MS is. People don't know what it is about living with a brain condition such as MS, but other brain conditions. Where we can talk about depression, we can talk about stroke, we can talk about muscular dystrophy or whatever, anything, and even the children's condition, like as we said, concentration problems, ADHDs, and the hyperactivity, and Asperger's syndrome, even autistic people. All brain conditions finally lead to one fact: you are locked in and no way out. You are locked in physically. Sometimes when your motor function are affected, you are locked in, of course, in motor way, and then you are locked in emotionally. So the music is always the way out of it. Open, so that's the awareness thing about the brain conditions. And then fundraising, it's about contacting the MS societies. It's about contacting people affected by MS, or supporters, or members of the family, or whatever, or local authorities in the country, because I'm working internationally, as you can see. I came all the way down to Hong Kong to raise this, awareness about multiple sclerosis. So the concert we organized, that could be. I always love the formula when the local artists come on board and we do things together. It could be anyone. It could be painter. It could be broadcaster. It could be rock musician. It could be rapper. It could be painter. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It could be jewelry creator. Whatever. But the thing is that we do it together, and we do it for the sakes of, open our brains. It's all about openness. It's all about, I have one visualization about the pathways and the brain condition. When you don't, well, it's very, very long ago, one of American psychiatrists I was talking to, when I was studying the brain, he told me one thing: "Oh, my dear, if you don't use it, you lose it." So if you don't use your pathways, they are getting lost. And I have this image, in a forest, in the wood, you're walking, and you have the paths different. And, sometimes people love one particular pathway through the river towards the mountain, whatever. And for one reason, it's abandoned, and people don't go there anymore, or maybe tree fell down, or whatever. And the pathway gets, overgrown. And that is our brain, how it works. If you don't use it, you lose it.
And how often do you find yourself at the piano?
Very often. I apply all the principles of the therapy with music to myself. First of all, I tried it all myself, because I started to really get into the therapy with the music. I'm not talking about musical therapy. I don't really like it because it's so difficult. It's more psychology work. But applied therapy, accompanied therapy with music, yes. And myself. I'm training myself. It's more or less the therapeutical work. I try to be every day on the piano, as a ritual, the habit of the day. Get on the piano and do your exercises. And that, by the way, that was one of the principles which I read about when I was researching this lost composer and pianist Paul Pabst. That was about exercising. Exercising with scales, exercising with, interesting method of, stretching out or enhancing different patterns of notes, or make it longer, make it shorter. So it's all about virtuosity. That was him. He because his brain was working. I can tell you, you can hear it in his older recordings. His brain, his fingers, his motor system was absolutely perfect. But it can be applicable to people with problems. And I tell you now, because I started really since a couple of months, I started to apply this method to the people really affected by the brain condition. And as such, I have a little disciple. She's 5, and she has the cerebral palsy. And in a way that she is completely smashed. Her motor functions are non-existent, in particular hands functions. She was taught how to stand up, so she's not badly, affected being in a wheelchair all the time. No, she's moving. So, but the legs functions and hands functions are different. And music, which I do with her, so far we got 10 sessions, and we got some successes, because on one session, number 9, she did with one finger with the left hand, she did me the full scale from C to C, C4, C5, and she did it unprompted, naturally. That's the power of music, because the natural way of making scale upwards, and she did it.
Is it possible for someone with MS who has never studied any musical instruments, hasn't taken any piano lessons, and let's say is not advanced in the early stages, and is like, for example, an adult, would you recommend starting to?
Yes, definitely. Start a new journey. Yeah, drop all the prejudices. It's all possible.
Have you been able to alter your medication with your piano playing and this technique that you apply? Have you been able? Has that been able to help you so that you could do without, for example, drugs, or do you still need to take?
You need to take the preventive drugs because that's the way the disease is sort of still there. It's all about managing symptoms, the music. It's all like physical exercises. Doing Tai Chi, for instance, is very good for MS. It's well known. Doing Kung Fu, doing yoga, doing lots of breathing exercises, relaxation, meditation, mindful meditation. So I wouldn't devil within the medication way. I wouldn't alter anything at all. I give everybody advice. Take your neurologist suggestion. Do MRIs regularly. Check your brain condition, and take the drugs if necessary. But manage the symptoms afterwards, because it's all about that.
Next, we're going to be listening to Olga Bobrovnikova with Paul Pabst's concert paraphrase on Tchaikovsky's Sleeping Beauty. We've been listening to Olga Bobrovnikova with Paul Pabst's concert paraphrase on Tchaikovsky's Sleeping Beauty. And to conclude,
looking back, I'm sure it was the consequences of terrible stress.
Absolutely. I think we all realize that now about how detrimental stress is to one's health in general.
It can be not necessarily neurological, it can be cancer.
Anything.
It can be, simply psychological sort of, event like depression or like what you call it burnout at work. Yeah.
But you're in a much better place now. Happy?
Yes. Extremely happy, extremely positive, extremely, all the new, I'm always open to the new acquaintances, new people, new friends. I will always say the place is never empty. It should be filled up. The gap should be filled up. Yes. No, I think that this situation of happy. What is being happy? It's being at the same time self-content and at the same time being positive about what will come and not be afraid of the coming day. So always looking positively and be happy with very little things like a sunshine, even like a little rain, because it's always after rain, there is a golden sky, always. And the singing of birds, and something. It's always something to look for. Life is beautiful. Life is worthwhile living.
My guest has been Olga Bobrovnikova, a pianist who has multiple sclerosis, on this World MS Day # Bringing Us Closer. Coming up shortly, today's Minutes That Matter.
This week on Life on 4, you will hear two major chamber works which are representative of their respective creators. One is Shostakovich, with his piano quintet in G minor, opus 57. And the other, Dvorak, through his piano quartet in E flat major, opus 87. They will be performed by two different combinations of musicians in the same concert, including the Danish String Quartet, pianists Alexio Bax and Wu Han, violinist Benjamin Bailman, violist Yura Lee, and cellist Jakub Korani. The pianists will also play Schubert's energetic Allegro in A minor for piano 4 hands. Remember to join us for this fabulous concert, Thursday at 8 p.m. here on Radio 4.